The name of our class is called Bal Tashchis and the Messiah. That's a strange word, isn't it? We'll find out what that word really means. We're actually going to study a portion of the Torah many of us look at and don't know the significance of it. Bal Tashchis and the Messiah. Tashchis, Tashchit, depends on how you want to pronounce it. As you can see on the screen, there is a, what type of tree? A fruit tree. So our topic today pertains to trees. Okay? Very important class. To help us to understand the words of the Messiah. Okay? How this ties in and how this pertains to many things that he said. Salvation. Those involved in salvation. Let's go to our first slide. I like my reader to read the book of Luke 13, 6 to 10. We're going to start the book of Luke, chapter 13, verses 6 to verses 10. Go to the next slide. So let's take a look as we go through the words of the Messiah. And when we go through this, we will get a better understanding of what that title really means, what it pertains to. Amen? Amen. Okay, so go ahead and read.
He spake also this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon and found none.
So there's a certain man. This is a parable by Yeshua. You can read the whole thing for yourself. As you can see, there was a certain man who had a fig tree. And it's underlined so you can connect the dots. Okay? He planted in his vineyard. Go ahead.
Then said he unto the dresser of his vineyard, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth it the ground? And he answering said unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I shall dig about it and dung it.
So he's saying, I'm going to take the fork, I'm going to dig around this plant, and I'm going to fertilize this plant. So he's saying here, this parable about a fig tree, and that this person who has this this garden with the fig trees, he has a vineyard, he came around looking for fruit, he couldn't find any fruit, as you can see in the picture, and he wanted to destroy this fig tree. And for 3 years he came looking for fruit, because there was a certain time that this tree was supposed to produce fruit, and it didn't. His intention was to destroy this tree, because it's useless. But there are certain things that he must follow, certain protocols. We are going to see what the Torah says about trees. This is very important, okay? He says, this fig tree, and find none, cut it down. So he told the man who was in charge of the vineyard, I want you to cut this thing down to the ground. We will see who this fig tree pertains to, and all those different things. All right? So, the one who was in charge of taking care of the vineyard, he had a plan. He said, you know what? Give me an opportunity to work with this tree. Allow me some time to at least work this soil a little bit more. Not to say it wasn't being worked on, but I'm going to put a little more effort into it. Because the tree is important. Although it didn't produce anything, it's a tree that does what? Produce fruit. It was designed to produce fruit. Although it did not produce anything for 3 years, it was still regarded as something to give one last try. Amen. Right? And so he also put dung, which is fertilizer, natural fertilizer that comes from who? The animals. Okay? The animals. You can hold the mic. Alright, so let's continue. Let's go to our next slide.
And if it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after that thou shalt cut it down.
So if it produces fruit, then everything is okay. But On the other hand, if it doesn't produce fruit, then just chop this tree down. Read on.
And he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Shabbat.
What is one of the practices of Hebrews? Because the audience obviously are not Gentiles. We all get that, right?
Yes.
It's Israelites. And we can see that he was speaking in the synagogue on the Shabbat. Who can tell me off the top of their head? What are the customs? What are some of the things read in the synagogue? Is it the New Testament?
No. Torah.
The Torah. The what?
The law.
The law. The Torah.
Precepts, judgments, statutes.
All right. So if the Torah is being taught in the synagogue, the people that he's saying this parable to is related to something that pertains to the Torah.
Amen.
Okay? They will be able to get it. At least part of it. It pertains to the Torah. And who can tell me how many books makes up the Torah?
5.
5 books. Right? Okay. Let's go to our next slide. So now we're going to go to Matthew chapter 21, verses 18 to verses 20.
Now in the morning, as he returned into the city, he hungered. And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing but leaves only thereon.
So now, this is not a parable. This is real time. He's actually passing through, going to the city, and he was hungry. Didn't he say in the parable that we read previously that the master of the vineyard was looking for something from this tree for 3 years, couldn't find anything? Okay? So now, our master, our Rabbi Yehoshua, he was hungry. Verses 19.
And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it and found nothing but leaves only thereon.
So the tree was, it's expected that this tree was supposed to have some fruit on it. All he found was leaves. And I'm not sure that he wanted to tap into those leaves for the resources, right? Because after all, what type of tree is it?
Fig tree.
And what are you supposed to find in a fig tree?
Figs.
Figs. All right, read on.
And said unto it, let no fruit grow on thee henceforward forever.
So he's speaking to this tree and having a conversation. And the tree responded, but he said to the tree, let no fruit grow on you henceforth forever. And presently, what happened?
And presently the fig tree withered away.
So right away, this tree just withered away. Okay, read on.
And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, how soon is the fig tree withered away?
There's a meaning behind this text that may have failed to make the connection. We will get that today. We will understand what this pertains to. Okay? Let's go. Let's continue. Now, the parable that Yeshua spake also have a connection to his experience of finding this tree that didn't have any fruits on it. When Yeshua speaks, there's a term in Hebrew called Haggadah or Agadah. Okay, let's go to our next slide. An Agadah is a way of conveying the meaning, the values, and the ideas of the Torah, 5 books, by way of storytelling. So it's like taking the Torah that you already know and putting that into a story that has a deeper message into it. It was commonplace during the time of the Second Temple to the end of the Talmudic period. Its purpose is to bring heaven down to earth and to elevate man to heaven. To bring the deeper understanding that exists up in heaven down to earth. To simplify heavenly things so that we can digest like a mother's milk. Okay? What does this have to do with the Messiah? The things that pertain to these parables. The parables themselves. The stories. What does it have to do with the Messiah? We have examples of the sower sowing seed. Right? And when you go into the studies of that, which we will do in time come, you'll learn more and more about the Messiah, that it pertains to Israel and it pertains to the kingdom that is to come. Okay? Let's go to our next slide. The Bible says in the book of John 5:39, it says what? Search
the scriptures.
The scriptures. We're just looking at little tidbits. Search the scriptures. So when Yeshua, if the custom, remember I said before that he was in a synagogue, he was speaking parables to them, and in a synagogue it is customary for the Torah to be read. So in order for us to understand the parables, we have to search the scriptures according to John 5:39. Now let's look at what Paul did. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Shabbat days, what did he do? He reasoned with them out of the scriptures. Right? Again it says in the book of Acts 17 and 11, this is speaking about the Bereans. They received the word with all readiness of mind, and what did they do? They searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. The book of Acts chapter 17 and verses 11. So when the Bereans, who are Hebrews, Jews, heard the words of Paul, they went back to the Torah and searched the Torah to see what this man was saying was true or not. If it pertains to what? Is it on? Okay. If it pertains to the Torah, if it pertains to the words of the Most High. Now, if you go in the Torah and you can't see the Messiah, then that's the wrong side. Because the Torah is the foundation in which everything resides. Okay? All right, let's continue. Our next slide. We're going to go to the book of Luke, chapter 24, 13 to verses 27.
Then he said unto them, O fools and slow of heart, to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things, and to enter into his glory? And being at Moses, at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself.
He called the people that he was speaking to regarding himself slow of heart. They were not as wise as they should be. They're a little slow at processing the Torah. Okay? And it says, he mentions the prophets have spoken. And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he had explained to them the things from the scriptures pertaining to himself. So there were no New Testament. So the parables that he was given, he brought them back to the scriptures. Because everything that he said pertained to himself and the work that has to happen. What he has to do. And pertaining to them. Because the message was to them. It wasn't to all the peoples on this earth. Okay? Let's move on.
And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you, while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses.
In the law of Moses, pause. That's the 5 books of Moses, right? The 5 books, the Torah. These are the words which I spake unto you. The words he spake unto him pertains to the Torah. A lot of people don't like that. They want to keep us away from that. Okay, read on.
And in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me.
Go ahead.
Then opened he their understanding, that they may understand the scriptures.
When your understanding is closed, you're like a blind person groping in the dark. You can't see, can't find your way. Let's go to our next slide. Now we're going to look at the book of John, chapter 5, verses 46 and 47. We're laying the foundation to get into our class pertaining to the trees, the fruit trees, okay? Continue.
For had he believed Moses,
if you had believed Moses,
he would have believed me.
You'll also believe me. Why?
For he, Moses, wrote of me.
So Moses wrote of the Messiah. Where did Moses write of the Messiah? Where can you find that?
In the Torah.
See, in the Torah, where? Did it say, well, John 11:35, Jesus wept. Did it say, when you read the Beatitudes, went up to the mountain, taught them, saying, blessed, blah, blah, blah. Where do you find that in the Torah? That's the question. Where do you find all these different activities? Where do you find his suffering? Where do you find him getting together the apostles in the Torah? Because these are things that is found in the Torah. And I know where they are, but a lot of people don't know where to find them in the Torah. Right? Do you think it's a coincidence he got 12 men just because he wanted to get 12? And there were so many other wise men in Jerusalem? Yes.
I think we have to let the brethren know what is the 5 books are, because we will know, but they will not.
Okay,
understand.
what you call it off?
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
That's right. All right, so if you have believed those 5 books, you will also believe me. Read on.
But if you believe not his writings, which is Moses' writings, how shall you believe my words?
So we have a problem, because he's saying we got to go back, get ourselves right with the Torah, and then we'll understand what the Messiah has to say. How can we understand those parables about the fruit trees and the fig tree and all those different things if we have no knowledge of the Torah? Let's go. Let's continue. What is Agada again? Agada is a way of conveying the meaning, the values, and ideas of the Torah through storytelling. Its purpose is to bring heaven down to earth and to elevate man to heaven. Because just think of the reason why a mother breastfeeds the child. They don't want that child to remain crawling or dependent. Okay? They want that child to grow, be healthy, the legs to be strong, and to rise up to be at the same level of the parent. When the Heavenly Father gives us his Torah, his words, it's to feed us like milk so that we can grow, get up off our feet, be strong, and stand and be like him. The words, the Torah came from heaven. But man has cast aside the one thing that he said comes directly from him that we should hold on to. So we are lost because we are following men's philosophies and commentaries of some of Tyndale and Schofield and all these different people rather than the words of the Most High. Okay? So what was Yeshua referencing in his parables? Let's go to our next slide and get that understanding. This is the answer. He was referencing one of the 613 commandments that is found in the Torah. As a matter of fact, it's mitzvot 604. The 604th mitzvot or instruction. Okay? So as you go through each one of the commandments, you come to this one, we find it's called Bal Tashchis. What is the Bal Tashchis? It is the biblical prohibition to do what? Cut down fruit trees. That's all it is. It's to prevent, it's to protect the fruit trees. We'll learn why this is so important and how this relates to the parables of Yeshua. Because when the man went to go he gave the order to cut the tree down, he just couldn't do it. There were certain policies, protocols that's in place that must be followed before that can happen. If you don't understand this from the Hebraic perspective, you just a good story that the tree didn't give any food and we have to be like wise. Yes, but that's not really what it's all about. There are protocols and order that the Most High himself is bound to, because this is his word. So when he says not to cut the fruit trees down, that's a commandment. And if you break this commandment, guess what? You're breaking all of the other commandments. Now our people in ignorance have cut down many trees, many fruit trees, because they didn't know that the Torah says to do that. Not to cut the trees down. Okay? Let's get into it. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 19 and 20 gives us that precept. Go ahead.
When thou shalt besiege a city a long time, in making war against it to take it, thou shalt not destroy the trees thereof by forcing an axe against them, for thou mayest eat of them, and thou shalt not cut them down.
Well, 1 second. Now, wisdom would say it's not talking about a regular tree. This alone tells us, by default, when you read the text, when you besiege a city, when you're waging war, okay, a long time in making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy the trees thereof by forcing an axe against it. So when you force the axe against it, you're putting some pressure with the axe and you're chopping that tree down because you want to lay siege. You need something to help batter against the door or burn around the city so you can force the occupants out and destroy them, or to cause the walls to crumble through heat. Okay? For you may eat of them. What? Just any old tree?
Nope.
And you shall not cut them down. Read on.
For the tree of the field is man's life, to employ them in the siege.
That's important. Let's go to our next slide.
Only the trees which thou knowest that they be not trees for meat, thou shalt destroy and cut them down.
So you have to make a careful selection. You have to look at the trees and investigate and to be familiar with the trees. If you're not familiar with any type of plant life, you'll burn everything down, and then when the time comes that you need some strength, some nourishment, you can't find any. Yes.
Is this not twofold? Is this not twofold? What the reason for asking that is that I was looking at the tree, and when God has His chosen people that they didn't hear it, He cast them out.
We're coming into that.
And also, it speaks also about both the humankind and the physical tree.
We're coming into that. You know,
Thou shalt destroy and cut them down, and thou shalt build bulwarks against the city that maketh war with thee, until it be subdued.
And as Dutch Moyle said, a careful understanding selection, he says, which you know, only the trees which you know. It means that we have to have some wisdom. We have to have understanding. Do you know our native brothers here in America? They know what trees, what plants to pick, the right things for medicine, for food, to sustain their lives. They know how to select certain grasses and eat. Certain grasses will clean you out, and some grasses will poison you, and some grasses will nourish your body and give you vitamin C or vitamin D or whatever vitamins that your body lacks and needs, right? That takes training. The elders will teach the younger ones what to look for. Now, if the elder ones have not learned anything, what will they be teaching the younger ones? How will the younger ones be fed so that they can grow and pass on that knowledge? See, ignorance is our killer. When we are ignorant, we die. But when we're knowledgeable of certain things, we will know to be careful. That's what the Torah is all about. It's instructions, how we should walk. Okay? Let's go to our next slide. All right, the meaning, as the brother said, is twofold. See why I told you to jump ahead? See that? The meaning is twofold. People as trees. Okay? We're going to get into that now. Let's continue. The meaning is twofold. Now, we're going to look at an example in the book of Judges. This is not to get deep into it, but simply to identify the precept. Shoftim. Judges 9 verses 1 to 20. Let's go and read.
And Abimelech the son of Jerubbaal went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem.
So we're dealing with men, right? He's speaking to all the men. Read on.
Whether is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh.
So you have 70 men to rule over you, 70 elders. Does that ring a bell? 70? Let's just leave it at that. Do you want to have 70 to make decisions, a council of elders to rule, or do you want to have one man to make the decisions? Read on.
And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, all his words. And their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Beelberith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him.
So he hired a bunch of ingrates, lowlifes. Okay, people he paid his way for support. Basically, that's what he did. You know, like when there's a campaign, people running for president or an office, they give people money, all promises, and that's how they gain support. So, if you do this for me, I'll give you support and all my family, and I have control of this and I have control of that. You can have access to all these things. As a matter of fact, I'll throw in a couple of jets, I'll throw in some plane tickets, whatever you need. We'll throw support behind you. Okay? Read on.
And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal.
So his father presumably had more than one wife. Read on. Let's go to the next slide.
Being 70 persons upon one stone. Notwithstanding yet, Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself.
So we say 70 persons upon one stone. That's also prophetical. Not going to get into that. But I underline it because I want you to be triggered into researching the Bible a little deeper. Okay? Jerubbaal was left, for he hid himself. That's also prophetical. One escaped and hid himself. Let's see what happened. Read on.
And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. And when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood in the top of the mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried.
Read on.
And said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. The trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them.
So wait a minute. Before, the conversation was that there were men that was spoken to. The conversations began with men. But now Jotham is saying, the trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. Read.
King over them. And they said unto the olive tree, Reign thou over us.
So we have a separation. We got a bunch of trees, okay, but then we have singled out an olive tree. Read.
Yeah. Just one comment. Anointing always deals with oil, which comes from the olive tree.
That's right.
But the olive tree said unto them, Should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me thy honor, God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees?
So, should I leave and rule over these trees? Read on.
And the tree said to the fig tree, Come thou and reign over us.
See? So the Bible is giving us something to look back at, to understand what the Messiah has in store for the future. Let's go to the next slide.
But the fig tree said unto them, Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees?
So we'll move from olive tree to fig tree. What is happening here? Go ahead.
Then said the trees unto the vine.
So now dealing with vines. So from olive to a fig to a vine. But still, the trees are the ones that are speaking. Read on.
Come thou and reign over us.
And the subject is still about a king. Do you see that?
Yes.
Read on.
And the vine said unto them, Should I leave my vine which cheereth God?
Read it again.
Should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said all the trees unto the bramble.
All right, hold on a second. So we have olive, which deals with anointing. We have fig also, which pertain to what?
Life, fatness of life.
Fatness of life, but it also connects back to the king. Okay? And we also have a vine, wine that pertains to what?
Grape.
But what does the olive, what does oil
and wine
have to do with the Messiah? Huh?
Anointing and oil.
Passover, okay? All right, continue.
And said all the trees unto the bramble, Come down and reign over us.
So now he's saying unto the bramble, Come down and reign over us. Read, next slide.
And the bramble said unto the trees, If in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon.
So, the bramble, what is bramble? Who knows what bramble is?
Dried.
Huh?
Dried wood.
Dry wood?
Yeah, dried
Okay.
wood. Yeah.
Stubbles.
Like sticks, like
Sticks,
small,
like
small little.
Sticks, yeah.
Kiefer, so you can do a search on that.
Yeah.
Twigs.
You can find that.
Dried twigs.
Twigs, shrubs,
All that is good.
right? What else?
Yeah.
Good for lighter fire.
Good for fire. Because all of a sudden you find that this bramble is associated with fire. Bramble with fire.
It's very light.
Very light, very delicate. Okay, dry wood.
So the fire can catch very fast.
And then we find that also the cedars of Lebanon just showed up. Right? Okay. Read verses 16.
Now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian.
Verses 18.
And ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons, 70 persons upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother.
So this is a family feud. You read the whole thing, you'll see that men in the book of Judges started to do whatever that was right in their own sight. I don't want to get deep into this, but I wanted to use this to set something up as far as understanding the significance or the connection that men are referred to as trees, but different types of men. Okay? Some for good and some for fire. Okay, Kifa, you got it?
Yes, according to the Merriam Dictionary, it's a 12th century term that's also Middle Eastern and Old English. Bramble, a term that's used for prickly shrubs of the rose family, including the raspberry, blackberry, and the fruit of a bramble, a rough prickly shrub or vine.
There you go, that's all we need. A rough prickly shrub or vine, something that you would use as a fence. Right? A guard. Next slide.
If ye then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you.
So he's speaking to the audience and says, you made a decision, you killed out the children of the father, and you made this man head over you. You're going to pay the consequences for what you've done. That was an evil thing that you did. Read on.
But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem, and the house of Milo, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem, and from the house of Milo, and devour Abimelech.
So it is laying down the foundation, brothers and sisters. I just wanted to touch on a few things. Didn't want to get deep in there. Now the connection between all three, the fig tree, the anointing oil, there's only one individual who fits all three. He's not only of Israel, okay? He's a king, he's also a priest, and he's also a warrior. Who is that? Who do you think that is?
Yeshua.
Yeshua. All right, let's move on to our next slide. Now we're going to go to the book of Psalms chapter 1. We have read this Psalms many times, and a lot of times we have not gleaned the connection to the Messiah from this. We will glean something today on this. Psalms 1 and verses 1. Let's read that.
Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful.
So it's speaking about a man. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's a man, right? Verses 2.
But his delight is in the law of the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and in his law doeth he meditate day and night.
So this man is receiving counsel from the Most High. He's not receiving counsel from the ungodly, the sinners, and the scornful. His delight comes from the Most High. His law, the Torah. Read on.
And he shall be like a tree
So this man will be like a tree, comparable to a tree. Read.
planted by the rivers of water,
Mm-hmm.
and bringeth forth his fruit in his season.
So the planting by the rivers of water. When your root is by the rivers of water, does the river stop when it comes nighttime?
Nope.
Does it stop during the day when the night?
No.
So it's continually flowing, right? That's why it says that this man meditates in the Torah day and also night. Okay? It's equivalent to a tree. Read on.
His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper.
So the image that you see here, he's trying to let us know that men or trees is a symbol or type of a man or mankind. And earlier we saw good trees and we saw bramble that's suitable for fire and cedar. Okay? Let's continue.
The ungodly are not so,
The ungodly are not so,
but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away.
as you see in this picture. The man has taken the wheat or whatever grain he has and he's casting it up to the wind. And as the wind blows, it separates the light, the refuse, the waste from the grain. Read.
Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous.
Because the Most High is going to toss certain ones up through trial, okay, tribulation, and those that are grounded will fall like seed and be fruitful, but those that are not grounded will blow with the wind, the trials, right? And you know something about separating the wheat from the chaff, or grain from chaff? It's a lot of work. It's a type of work that causes sweat. It's hard work. Now in our country, the United States of America, and the modern world, we have machines that do this thing, right? That vibrate and separate the good stuff from the bad stuff. Sometimes the good stuff is also lost. But in the other parts of the world who do not have the machinery, they have to do it the hard way. Okay? Verse 6.
For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.
So he knows, back to the Torah, which says you have to know the trees. To know which one has to be burnt and which one is good to bring in for food. So the Lord says, I know the righteous trees, and I also know the ungodly trees. And the ungodly trees will what? Perish. Let's go to the next one. Jeremiah chapter 17, 7 and 8, then verses 13, and then verses 19 and 20. Just pull in a few things here. Continue.
Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is.
Verse 8.
For he shall be as a tree.
So wait a minute. Did we just read that in the book of Psalms?
Yes.
Jeremiah is quoting David, Psalms of David. Blessed is the man who put his trust in the Lord. He will be like a tree. Read on.
Planted by the waters, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green.
Because the water sustains the tree and gives the tree enough protection from the sun. No matter how hot the sun is, the water keeps pumping in that tree, it's able to sweat out and protect itself through moisture. It's not going to crack, it's not going to break, it's going to be brittle. Okay, yes?
Every analogy that the scriptures and the words give always tie back to each other. You know, you have Yeshua as a vine. 1 minute he's the bread, next minute he's the wine, he's the oil, he's the living water. They all tie together. We see here now the water, and it being green is being sustained by the word of the Most High.
And this is why we can tell this is a Hebrew book.
Idioms.
It's a Hebrew book because they all relate back to the one people and the one Messiah that is sent for the people. Okay? So he shall be like his leaf shall be green, read.
And shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit.
So what does it mean by careful in the time of drought? It's the same way with the human body. When the human body is in jeopardy, the body goes into defensive protective mode. It starts to protect the vital organs. All of a sudden, the toes are not that important anymore. So the blood supply fails from going to the toes. It stays in the area of the heart. Then it goes through a countdown. What is an organ that we don't need right away? So maybe one of these other things will fail, just to keep you alive. Okay? And what happened is the tree, during the time of turmoil, drought, it goes through that protective mode, where it has to select, okay, I gotta cut down on how many leaves I have, or I gotta lose a branch or two. Now I'm gonna have to lose my top, but preserve the root. It's always, the last place that it preserves is the root, okay? So the tree doesn't have to be careful, because the water is always flowing. And that's how Jeremiah and David is saying about us,
yes,
that we have to be before the Most High. Okay?
Right, no matter what circumstance we find ourselves in, when we stay to the river, we will always be green.
We stay in His Torah. His Torah. Don't let anyone tell us otherwise. His Torah is our life. All right? So who was the audience that Yeshua was speaking to? Because that's pulled out of Jeremiah, but you need to know everything in context. The prophecy of who this was referred to. Verses 13.
O Lord, the hope of Israel.
The hope of the whole world.
Israel.
The hope of the United Nations.
12 tribes.
The 12 tribes of Israel. Read.
All that forsake thee shall be ashamed.
So when you turn from His instructions, it's like a tree no longer at the river. Read.
And they that depart from me shall be written in the earth, because they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living waters.
So the fountain of living waters is for who?
Israel.
Israel. Continue.
Thus saith the Lord unto me, Go and stand in the gate of the children of the people.
So the audience pertains to Israelites. Read.
Whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by the which they go out, and in all the gates of Jerusalem.
Verse 20.
And say unto them, Hear ye the words of the Lord, ye kings of Judah, and all and all inhabitants of Jerusalem, that enter in by these gates.
So we know who the audience is. Let's go to our next slide. 2 Ezra chapter 9, verses 30 to verses 37. That's found in the Apocrypha. Continue.
And thou speakest, saying, Hear me, O Israel, and mark my words.
Mark His words. Read.
Thou seed of Jacob.
So the audience pertains to the seed of Jacob. And what does seed do when you put it in the ground?
They grow.
Into what?
A tree.
Tree. And if we follow the protocols of Psalms chapter 1, will be what? A tree
by the river,
planted by the rivers of water that do what? Produce
forth good fruit.
When?
In its season.
In its season.
Notice it didn't say, just say Jacob. It said seed of Jacob. So when it mentions seed, it's talking to even future. Not just that's there, but all the seed of Jacob.
Okay. Read on.
For behold, I sow my law in you, and it shall bring fruit in you, and ye shall be honored in it forever.
We will be honored in it forever. once we abide in Him. The law. See that? Read on, verse 32.
But our fathers which received the law keep it not,
Kept it not.
and observe not thy ordinances, and though the fruit of thy law did not perish, neither could it, for it was thine.
So even though the law was given to Israel, it says here, and though the fruit of your law did not perish, even though we were perishing, His law remained pure.
Amen.
Do you understand that? Okay? Read on.
Neither could it, for it was thine.
It couldn't perish because it belongs to the Heavenly Father. 33.
Yet they that received it perished, because they kept not the thing that was shown in them.
Sown in them. Let's go to our next slide. Verse 34.
And lo, it is a custom when the ground hath received seed, or the sea a ship, or any vessel meat or drink, that being perished wherein it was sown or cast into, that thing also which was sown or cast therein, or received, doeth perish, and remaineth not with us. But with us it hath not happened so.
Okay, so he's basically giving like a midrash commentary about the Torah. When you seed, it's a custom, it's normal, natural. When you put a seed in the ground, it no longer remains as a seed, it perishes as a seed. But it's supposed to produce a plant. You understand that? Okay, read on.
For we that have received the law perish by sin, and our heart also which received it, notwithstanding the law, perisheth not, but remaineth in his force.
Now, I put up on the screen, see Paul's writings. Because, Paul went through this midrash of saying how that we ourselves, frail, the law was given to us, but we failed at it, does not make the law of no effect. Does not make the law a failure. We are the failure.
That's right.
You understand that? And that's what this is. If you read it in the comparison, you will see this is exactly where Paul got his writings from. Okay? Now we're going to go to Jeremiah chapter 2, verses 2, 13, and 21.
Israel was holiness unto the Lord, and the first fruits of his increase. All that devour him shall offend, evil shall come upon them, saith the Lord.
So Israel is likened as first fruits, because he's comparing it with the other nations. You have all these other things that are out there, but among all these families of the earth, Israel is his primary gift. Jeremiah 2 and 13, read.
For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water.
Instead of turning to the Most High to receive the flow of understanding, the Torah, we turn to other men's doctrines, writings, precepts, ideologies, and these things are broken. Because every once in a while, the man has to make some correction. He changed his mind. It was 1 minute, a man and a woman should be married, and the next minute they're preaching, it's okay for two men to be married. Because Jesus loves us all. Right? And that we're all one. There's no chosen people anymore. These are precepts of men. Okay? Jeremiah 2 and verses 21.
Yet I had planted thee a noble vine, holy a right seed. Holy a right seed. How then art thou turned into the degenerated plant of a strange vine unto me?
So Jeremiah is saying, I have planted you a noble vine. That vine pertains to Israel. Israel, the first fruit, who's supposed to remain in the fountain of living waters. And they are supposed to be a right seed. How did he turn to be a degenerate plant? A strange vine.
Strange.
Remember what Yeshua said? He looked at the tree for food, and there was nothing to be found?
Nope.
Now let's look at Mark chapter 8, verses 22 to verses 25.
And he cometh to
Bethsaida.
Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught.
Now, spit is also known as what? A liquid. Yeshua was putting liquid on this man's eyes, and the man received sight. Right? Okay. Yeshua also says, if you abide by this water, that you will what? You will live. Okay? So this man was going through a process, which the process in itself is to convey a message. Okay? Let's go to our next slide.
And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking.
I see men as trees walking. Now it's interesting that the Bible will give us this piece of information. It could have said anything, but it wanted to convey a message to us. When the man mentioned trees, it's trying to tie back to the Torah. You understand that? Remember, this man, being a tree, needed to be fertilized and watered. He could not produce fruit. What did Yeshua did? Yeshua also acted the role of a husbandman. We'll cover that shortly. Okay? So, he's tending to one of his trees, giving it some water and the word. And guess what happened? He was able to see again. And those that were around him, the disciples, they were fruitful trees. So he saw men as what? Trees walking. Verse 25.
After that, he put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up. And he was restored and saw every man clearly.
So the first time he couldn't see clearly, but then after the second time, he was able to see. That's prophetic. That's prophetic, okay? Let's go to our next slide. Hosea chapter 9 and verses 10. Hosea chapter 9 verses 10. Go ahead and read.
I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first stripe in the fig tree at her first time. But they went to Baal and separated themselves unto that shame, and their abominations were according as they loved.
So, without going into all this other stuff, Israel is compared as fruit. Okay? The first time is the early stage of Israel. The latter time is the last stage of Israel. Let's move on. Got a lot of things to read. When is it permissible to cut down a fruit tree? Let's see what the sages have to say. Because there comes a point in time when you have to make a decision, and you got to look and say, okay, this tree is not producing, but it's a fruit tree, and the Torah says to don't cut it down. So what do? Do I leave this tree to just continue sapping my resources? Do I keep throwing water in it? Or do I cut it down? Let's go through the process. The sages are our elders who knew the Torah. They lay down certain things for us to follow. Let's look at it carefully. Okay? The rabbis, what they said. Thus, whenever possible, it is preferable, number one,
to ask a non-Jew to cut down a tree.
The Torah restricts us from cutting down a tree, fruit tree. The Torah does not restrict another nation to cut down a fruit tree. Think about that carefully. Think about this carefully. Ask a non-Jew to cut it down. We saw how Israel was disobedient. So when Israel was disobedient, what did the Most High do to cut down his own vine, his own tree? He sent Nebuchadnezzar to do what? Cut down his tree. When Jerusalem was not walking in the right ways, the elders were doing, he had to drive them out of the temple. Eventually he pronounced something upon Jerusalem. And he says, When you shall see the armies do what?
Compass.
Compass. Let's hold that for a moment. Let's read the next one.
To sell a tree with the surrounding area to a non-Jew before cutting it.
Before you cut it down, you sell the tree. Sell. What do you call selling of an Israelite?
Slavery.
Slavery. You see how the sages outline this thing, and it all pertains back to Israel, physically speaking? That the only way you can deal with the tree is to sell it. You can't cut it. You sell the tree with the surrounding area to a non-Jew, and they will cut it down themselves. So now we're given into slavery. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and many other places in the Torah. Now, many of our brothers who hate rabbinical writings, they lack the understanding of these things. You've got to go into the writings to understand it. The reason why they hate is because they don't understand it themselves. We hate things that we do not understand. Verses 3.
Before chopping it down, to let the tree wither and die on its own.
So you allow the tree, you cut off rain, water, supplies to the tree, and the tree will wither and come to the point it's going to die. When it's dead, then you can remove it. You understand that?
Yes.
Did that happen to Israel? Did he move away from Israel?
Yes.
And didn't Israel become dried up?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Why did Yeshua says in the book of John that belly will flow what? Living water, right? Now, it says here, it is advisable that any decision involving the action of a tree be presented to a competent what? Rabbi. So wait a minute. It goes back to Yeshua.
Yep.
If you want to make a decision in cutting the tree down, you got to go check the scholar, the rabbi. Check with the rabbi. When you check with the rabbi, he will look at the tree and see if it's worth cutting or not. Didn't that occur with the story, the parable?
Yes.
All right? When presenting the question, the following information should be submitted. Let's see what's happening with the tree first before we can decide to cut it down. Read verse number A, or letter A.
If the tree bears or will bear fruit.
So it depends on if the tree is bearing. If it's bearing, you can't cut it. So the rabbi looks at the tree. I see half a fruit on the tree. You can't cut it down. Now, does it have our habit of going in and out? Can't cut it. Because next year it might produce, maybe the year after that it will not produce. So you're not allowed to cut this tree down. You have to be patient with the tree. Okay? B.
The location of the tree.
Where the tree is located. It really depends on the area. You can't cut the tree.
It's the water.
Okay? Now when you think about Israel in the context, we can see how we fail as a nation of people, a family. Like it says in A. Will it bear fruit? If the prospect is that we will produce something, then we will not be cut down at all. But once we fail at that, we were removed. Okay? Our location is also important. See,
Its value and significance.
the value of Israel. The value. Sometimes we have fruit that has no taste in it. But if you work with it, it might be able to gain some taste. Depends on the salt, right? The fertilizer. Okay? D.
The reason for cutting it down.
The reason. There must be a real reason for cutting it down. Okay? E.
If it is possible or worthwhile to transplant it.
Is it possible? Is it worthwhile? Because we can't cut it. The place that it's in is not good ground. Alright? So I'm going to have to transplant this tree somewhere else. It's going to take me some work because I got to dig this huge thing, pull it up, and move it somewhere else. Okay? But you can't kill the tree. What did Yeshua, the Messiah, what did the Most High did with Judah, the southern kingdom? They transplant the southern kingdom because there was still a promise of bearing fruit into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. And what happened? They stayed there for a while, and then they were brought back into the land. You see that? Okay. F.
If it can be cut down by a non-Jew.
We already covered that. Okay, let's go to G.
If it can be sold to a non-Jew.
Slavery, we covered that also. Okay? Now we're going to look at the works of Philo. Some of y'all are not familiar with Philo, so let's go into that. Who is Philo? If you are familiar with Josephus, the works of Josephus, okay? Then there's also, and he's a historian, Philo is also a historian. Okay? He's a Hebrew. Let's go right into the next slide. And it's covering husbandry. The part we're going to read pertains to husbandry. Alright? So let's look at a little bit of the background of Philo. Okay? Philo was probably born with the name Julius Philo. His ancestors and family were contemporaries to the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the rule of the Seleucid Empire. His ancestors and family had social ties and connections to the priesthood in Judea, so he was a Hebrew. Okay? The Hasmonean dynasty, Herodian dynasty, and Julio-Claudian dynasty in Rome. Philo visited the temple in Jerusalem at least once in his lifetime. Philo would have been a contemporary to Yeshua of Nazareth and his apostles. Philo, along with his brothers, received a thorough education. They were educated in Hellenistic culture of Alexandria and Roman culture, to a degree in ancient Egyptian culture, and particularly in the traditions of Judaism, in the study of Jewish traditional literature and in Greek philosophy. So Philo was a Jew. Not just a Jew, but he was a Jew from Alexandria, Egypt. That's where he lived. He was familiar with the Hellenistic or the Greek culture. So a lot of his writings is similar to a lot of the New Testament writings because he lived around the time that Yeshua was alive. Okay? So let's go into our slide and let's see if we can gain some understanding about husbandry, okay, trees, and different things. So what Philo's going to do is give us a perspective, some background behind the practice of husbandry of ancient Israel during the time of the Second Temple, during the time of Yeshua. Okay? So it's important for us when we read the New Testament to go into the histories behind the New Testament to understand the mindset, the language, the culture of the people at that time. Okay? You just can't throw messages out and preach and blah, 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 and you have no understanding of the idioms, the words that they used back in those days, the types of lifestyle that they lived, and those different things. Because you'll be making a huge mistake. Alright? Alright, number 3.
What man is there who is at all hasty in forming an opinion, who would not think that the being a husbandman,
and
the occupying oneself in cultivating the ground were the same thing?
Let's look at that carefully. So he's saying, he's making a comment here, right? Some people have the opinion, they're so quick to think that being a husbandman and one who cultivates the ground is the same thing. And he's going to make a distinction that a husbandman is different from a tiller of the ground. It's a big difference. Yes, they're dealing with agriculture. Yes, they're dealing with the earth and plants, but it's two different jobs. Okay? Now this goes right back to the Messiah, because it explains the role of the Messiah from a Jew living in Alexandria through history. Okay? From a historical perspective. Continue.
And yet, in real truth, not only are these things not the same, but they are even very much separated from one another, so as to be opposed to and at variance with one another.
So they're opposing each other, they fight against each other. The husbandman versus the tiller of the ground. Read.
For a man without any skill may labor at taking care of the land.
Any man without a skill. You can go dig any ground, you can dig any hole, no problem. A ditch digger. That doesn't make you a husbandman. Okay? Which goes back to a husband. A husband is one who has a wife. The husbandman takes care of the trees which is planted in the soil. The seed that he put within the soil produces fruit. His wife becomes as the earth. You understand that? The husband puts the seed, then his fruit comes out from the earth. Husbandman puts the seed in the earth, nature nurtures it, and it produces trees, fruit trees. Alright? So, continue.
But if a man is called a husbandman, sorry, he from his mere name is believed to be no unskillful man.
By default, the term husbandman means this man is a learned man. Read on.
But a farmer of experience, inasmuch as his name has been derived from agricultural skill, of which he is the namesake.
Let's go to our next slide. Read.
And besides all this, we must likewise consider this other point, that the tiller of the ground looks only to one end, namely to his wages.
So the tiller of the ground will dig the ditch and say, where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my check? That's the difference. And it goes back to the hireling and the shepherd. That he also covers that, but we're not going to go into that. The hireling just do the job to get the job done, gets paid, go home. He doesn't care whether it produces or not. He doesn't care if the tree produces or not. He just waters it, whether the water rolls down the hill, whether the surface is wet, but the ground is underneath is dry, because that's what he'll do. He'll just sprinkle some water. He'll even piss on the tree, just to make it look like it got some water, right? And he would even throw some salt around it, some fertilizer around it, but he would not till the soil or work the tree or pay attention to the tree. Yes?
I'm looking at today's nurses in the hospitals. They don't care for the patients that they used to be. You know, before time the nurses would take care of the patients and make them come out alive. But today the nurses, they're just, make to see when at least to get your food. They're not making sure you eat it. They're not showing any such light. So we're talking about today's world.
And it goes back to the pastors. Pastors go to learn how we can get the money to flow and the numbers to look big and the recognition publicly. But to be fed, to be full of nutrition, they're not interested in that, okay?
And besides all this, we must likewise consider this other point, that the tiller of the ground looks only to one end, namely to his wages, for he is altogether a hireling.
He's a hireling.
And has no care whatever to till the land well.
He doesn't care how the soil is, when it's rough or finely turned soil, or if all of the stuff is in the earth properly, as we talked about before. Read on.
But the husbandman would be glad also to contribute something of his own.
The husbandman will sacrifice something from his own pocket. He will work hard. He's not there to get a check. He cares about his work. His heart is in his work, okay? Read on.
And to spend in addition some of his private resources for the sake of improving the soil.
So when a man is married to his wife, and because he invests everything of his own personal into his wife, no man can come in and take his wife and do whatever he wants. That man is a dead man. Right? Because he has investment. But the one who's like just a boyfriend type situation, he doesn't care. If someone sleeps with a woman, he doesn't care. Whatever happens to the woman, happens to the woman. He has no real investment to be concerned about. But the husbandman will sacrifice something for his wife or for his vine. Okay?
And avoiding blame from those who understand the business.
So he looks for resources to improve the soil, and he avoids the blame of those who, understand the business. Because they'll say, well, man, you're a husbandman, and you should be living up to the standard of the name. Like a chef. You're a chef, and there are other chefs. And they're going to be looking at you to hold up the integrity of that title as being a chef, okay? That's why there's a doctor's association, chef association, mechanics association, because you have to always keep yourself sharp to keep the standards up.
Your reputation.
The reputation, thank you. Read on.
For his desire is to derive his revenues every year, not from any other source, but from his agricultural laborers, when they have been brought into a productive state.
Let's bring this into Israel. Let me read that again. For his desire is to derive his revenues, his income, every year, not from any other source. The Most High is not trying to get any first fruits from the nations. The first fruits always come from Israel. That's his source.
That's a concern.
The Torah doesn't say for the other nations to bring any sacrifices, but Israel required, right? But from his agricultural labors, so the Most High invests and he reaps from that. He's not reaping from something else, okay? When they have been brought into a productive state, and that's the reason why Yeshua was saying all those different things and teaching the people, because he wanted them to produce fruit. Israel to produce fruit, okay? Let's go to the next slide. This is just a piece of it. I didn't give the whole of it. Read.
For the same thing happens likewise in the case of men.
So likewise with the husbandman dealing with plants, the same thing happens with mankind. Alright? Let's go to the next one.
First of all, therefore, the husbandman is not anxious to plant or to sow anything that is unproductive.
So he's not eager to just say, hey, I'm going to throw this thing down. And you got to choose the best of the best to plant. Right? He's careful about his work. You look at the seed and says, nah, that's no good. Esau, no good. Wasted away. This one, no good. Oh, Jacob have I loved. And I've chosen you to produce more fruits. Read.
But only all such things as are worth cultivation, and as bear fruit, which will bring a yearly produce to their master's man, for nature has pointed him out as the master of all trees, and animals, and all other things, whatever which are perishable.
Verses 9.
And what can man be but the kind that is in every one of us, which is accustomed to reap the advantage from all that is sown or planted. But since milk is the food of infants, but cakes made of wheat are the food of full-grown men.
Let's go to the next slide.
So also the soul must have a milk-like nourishment in its age of childhood, namely the elementary instruction of encyclical science.
Encyclical science, read.
But the perfect food which is fit for men consists of explanations, dictated by prudence and temperance and every virtue.
All right, let's pause for a moment and let's relook at this, okay? It's doing a comparison in terms of individuals. Also, he's breaking it down to another level. And he's saying, just the same way with trees differ from each other, right? And you fertilize it. He's looking at mankind now, okay? That we as mankind need to feed on things that builds up knowledge by reading and studying and applying ourselves. That's why the Torah says that Jacob dwelt in tents and Esau was a man of the field. It's two different things. So when Jacob dwelt in tents, it's going back to a man who reads, writes, and studies and has an education. A one who applies themselves to learning, not wasting time, hunting and trying to take life, but a man who learns how to bring life. Two different things. Because Esau was never a man to plant or grow anything. He was a taker of life. All his life was to take something from other people, from the land, and not bring anything back. Jacob now, with his uncle Laban, what was he doing? Learning how to multiply the sheep instead of taking. Okay? So, but the perfect food, which is fit for men, consists of explanations dictated by prudence and temperance and every virtue. For these things being sown and implanted in the mind will bring forth most advantageous fruit, namely good and praiseworthy actions. Basically, this is Psalms chapter 1. If you stay in the Torah, you're going to produce fruit. Just as you see in these pictures here. Reading brings up life. The Torah brings up life. Let's go to our next slide.
By means of this husbandry,
This type of husbandry of the mind, sowing knowledge into the brain, read,
all the trees of the passions and vices, which shoot forth and grow up to a height, bringing forth pernicious fruits, are rooted up and cut down and cleared away, so that not even the smallest fragment of them is left.
So without the Torah being in us, we become useless. The husbandman is not going to use a dummy. He has no use for it. That's why in the kingdom he's going to teach us again. He's going to go a second time and give us a break, just like you read in the parable. The man says, hold on, boss. Give me a chance to work these trees, put some investment into it some more. I'll spend some time with it, and I'll see if it's going to bear or not. What does the Messiah do? Father, hold on a minute. I'm going to rule this kingdom, and I'm going to bring everything into subjection. And I'm going to teach Israel, Isaiah chapter 2, Micah 4, and so forth, right? I'm going to teach them. But in the kingdom, he's going to have his angels to take away those things that offend and throw it into the fire. Did it say that?
Yeah.
Matthew chapter 13, right? Though the angels will separate and throw those things into the fire, the bramble, okay? So
that not even the smallest fragment of them is left, from which any new shoot of evil actions can subsequently spring up. And if besides there are any trees which produce no fruit at all, neither good nor bad,
so these are not fruit trees. These are just regular trees. Read.
the husbandman will cut them down too. But still he will not suffer them to be completely destroyed.
In the kingdom, you're going to have the non-Israelites. They don't produce any fruit whatsoever, but they still have a use.
Serve.
They have to serve. All right? Read on.
But he will apply them to some appropriate use, making them into stakes and fixing them as pales all round his homestead.
Wait a minute. Jerusalem is our homestead, and all the nations around are as stakes. Stakes to be used for our homestead, Jerusalem. Read on.
Or using them as a fence for a city to serve instead of a wall.
You see that?
Watch that.
The servants in the kingdom, the other nations will be serving Israel. Let's go to the next slide.
For Moses says, every tree which bringeth not forth fruit good to eat, thou shalt cut down, and thou shalt make it into stakes against the city, which shall make war upon them.
Read.
Deuteronomy 20.
Read.
Okay. And these trees are likened to those powers developed in words alone, which have nothing in them but mere speculation.
These trees have no Torah in them, but just talk. All right? Read on.
Among which we must class medical science, when unconnected with practice, by which it is natural that such persons may be cured.
So when you look at from the medical standpoint, he's addressing this from a medical standpoint now. And he's saying, listen, doctors, when you put to practice, you bring cures. You help people to be cured, right? Read.
And also the oratorical and Harlan species of rhetoric, which is conversant, not about the discovery of the truth.
People who like to talk a lot, they can speak well. Just talking heads. Right? Read.
But solely about the means deceiving the hearers.
Read it again.
But solely about the means of deceiving the hearers by plausible persuasion.
See? So that's all they do. You have one side who is effective in healing people, then you have others who talk, but they have produced no fruit whatsoever. No healing. Continue.
These then are the professions and promises made by the husbandry of the soul.
So Philo is changing things up from the regular husbandman, meaning in our culture. Now we're going to on a spiritual level now. Okay? Souls of mankind, read.
I will cut down all the trees of folly.
All the trees of what?
Folly.
Folly, read.
And intemperance.
Uh-huh.
And injustice and cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
And I will eradicate all the plants of pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
and appetite, and anger, and passion, and of all similar affections, even if they have raised their heads as high as heaven.
Even if, you see, that's the reason why people ask this question. What about the Gentiles? What about these people? Even if Esau raises his head to heaven, the Most High says, I'm going to cut it down. Can we change that? Can you change that, Elder? Can you change that?
No.
No, we can't change that, right? Even if they raise their head like a plant up, we're still going to cut it down. Because we already recognize that these are brambles. These are nothing. Read on.
And I will burn out their roots,
Mm-hmm.
darting down the attack of flame to the very foundations of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
so that no portion, nay, no trace, or shadow whatever of such things shall be left.
That's the plan of the Most High. See, He's the husband of the souls, a husbandman of the souls. 18.
And I will destroy these things, and I will implant in those souls which are of a childlike age.
Those that are like childlike age.
Young shoots, whose fruit shall nourish them.
That's the reason why He says, unless you become as one of these little ones, you can't come in. Because I can't work with you. See, read on.
And those shoots are as follows.
So the shoots that He's going to work with, let's see what Philo says.
The practice of writing.
The practice of writing.
And reading with facility. An accurate study and investigation of the works of wise poets.
That sounds like Joseph. That sounds like Jacob. One who likes to invest their time in reading and writing and understanding the Word. Not people who like to just move around and just do whatever. You see, and David is a good example.
Geometry and a careful study of rhetoric speeches.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole course of encyclical education.
Rhetorical speeches like Proverbs. Read.
And in those souls which have arrived at the age of puberty or of manhood.
So you move from a child now, you mature, you're a teenager, and now you move into manhood. What?
I will implant things which are even better.
Even better.
And more perfect.
And more perfect. So you've been feeding, you've been spending your time practicing, writing, reading, understanding the Torah. You applied yourself to studies. So now I can use you and give you better understanding. Why do you think that Nebuchadnezzar chose Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Because they were men who applied themselves to learning. And he put them into schools. And when the time came, they were the ones that were chosen to interpret the dreams. And the others was thrown into the fire. Of course, they were thrown into the fire too. But they passed the test and got even more recognition than before. You see that? That's why it says that when the sun beats down on you, because you're planted by the rivers of water, the heat of the sun will not harm you. Why do you think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was applied to the flame, which is heat, like the sun, and nothing harmed them? Because they stayed in the Torah.
Live in water.
They were young too.
They were young too. Read on.
Namely, the tree of prudence, the tree of courage.
No chickens. Because a lot of Israelites are a bunch of chickens. Can't find them.
Yeah.
When you're looking for the men to stand up, where are the men? Can't find them. Read.
The tree of temperance. The tree of justice.
The tree of justice.
The tree of every respective virtue.
That's what we're talking about. These are the kind of trees that the Most High is looking to work with. Next slide. 22.
How then could anyone show more manifestly that the lawgiver looks upon the wicked man as a tiller of the earth?
The lawgiver already recognized, because Cain was a tiller of the ground, wasn't he?
Yes.
Wasn't he wicked?
Yeah.
But Abel was a man with 10 sheep, right? So what's the difference?
One cared more.
One cared, and the other one didn't give a damn, right?
Paycheck.
He didn't care. Read on.
And not as a husbandman, then by such language as we were sea used, we must not indeed suppose that what is here said is said of a man who is able to work by his hands or by his feet, or by any other of the powers of his body, or of any mountain land, or of any campaign country, but that is applicable to the powers existing in every one of us.
Let's go to the next slide. Read.
For it happens that the soul of the wicked man is not concerned about anything else except about his earthly body.
Pause. A type of seed only interested in earthly things. Didn't Yeshua says all these things the Gentiles what? But you, who are Israelites, should not be thinking like the Gentiles.
Kingdom.
All they're interested in is about the earthly body, what's on this earth. And while they're on this earth, they're looking at another planet to see what we can glean from that planet, what we can rape from that planet. So just like that movie, Avatar.
Oh, Avatar.
Avatar. They went over to another planet. They saw the creatures. They wanted to kill the creatures. They couldn't get rid of them. So they control the creatures so they can get the resources. That's all they wanted. It was the resources. Read on.
And about all the pleasures of that body.
That's all they care about. 23.
Moreover, the general crowd of men traveling over the different climates of the earth and penetrating to its furthest boundaries and traversing the seas and investigating the things that lie hid in the recesses of the ocean.
Oil, digging for treasures in the water. These men, general crowd of men, is not God's chosen fruit, God's chosen trees. The Most High's chosen vine is not a general crowd of men. That's the nations. The mindset of them is to go dig up everything on the planet, go in the ocean as deep as they can, and get the natural resources. That's their mindset.
Look for treasures.
These are the ones that are classified as the soul of the wicked.
Yep.
And these are the ones that the Most High have to burn. Because if they sneak over into the kingdom, don't tell me that they're not going to be plotting against the Messiah in the kingdom.
Same old.
They'll be like in the kingdom, like, you know what? What do you think about this, Bob? I think if we can make this move, and the devil left us enough instruction, we can take the Messiah. Because we can see him. Move on. Continue.
And leaving no single part of the whole universe unexplored, is continually providing from every quarter the means by which it can increase pleasure.
Think about this. This was written back during the time of Christ, the Messiah, Yeshua, right? The second temple, during the time of the disciples. This is Philo, a Hebrew living in Egypt. And this man has the wisdom to see how the Gentiles operated. That even, what does it say? And leaving no single part of the whole universe unexplored. What do you call that today? NASA, space travel. Is continually providing from every quarter the means by which it can increase pleasure. What satisfied me? Not about the Most High. Let's go to our next slide. Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah chapter 5. Continue. Verses 1. Read.
Now when I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard.
So if this person has a vineyard and he's called my beloved, what's the other name for the my beloved, well-beloved?
Spouse, husband, wife.
Husband, man. Husband, man. Husband, man touching his vineyard. The husbandman is touching his vineyard, right? Read on.
My well-beloved have a vineyard in a very fruitful hill.
So he has a vineyard and it's in a fruitful hill. So we got to identify this hill, right? We have to also identify the vineyard. We have to also identify the well-beloved. We know he's a husbandman, right? Because only husbandmen has vineyards, right?
Yes.
Read on.
And he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine.
So he fenced it. The Torah is also a fence. The Pharisees made fences out of the Torah. Extra, like you can't tie your shoelace in the Shabbat, or you can't walk a certain distance in the Shabbat. Because if you can break this fence, you will go in and steal. You will go further. What they did was not wrong. But what happened is that they make the fence more important than the other thing. That's what the Messiah was chastising them about, not about the fence. Do you understand that? Read on.
And built a tower in the midst of it.
What tower was built on this fruitful hill that was fenced? What's the name of that tower? What's the name of the tower? A tower is something that can be seen from everywhere. And Solomon had dedicated this tower. What is it called? The temple. Thank you. The temple. Read on.
And also made a winepress therein.
The winepress goes right back to the priesthood. Read on.
And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes.
Because after he set up the temple and all the ordinance thereof to be a light and be above all the nations, they failed at their task. He fertilized it. It wasn't producing anything. Read on.
And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem.
The inhabitants of Jerusalem pertains to the vineyard, pertains to the fruitful hill called Zion, Mount Zion.
And its people.
Read on.
And men of Judah,
Judge,
I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard?
But the man says, let me do a little bit more work on this plant,
Yes.
this tree, and I'll dig it and I'll dung it, and perhaps it'll bear something. So the question is, what else can be done to it? Read.
That I have not done in it. Wherefore, when I look that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes.
Something unpalatable. You can't do anything with it, right? Can enjoy it. Let's go to the next one.
And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down.
Wasn't Jerusalem surrounded?
Yes.
Wasn't it broken?
Yes.
Wasn't it trodden down?
Yes.
Did we read that earlier by the sages that the fruit tree cannot be broken or killed? But the way to deal with the fruit tree is to step back and pass it on to non-Israelites. Because we are forbidden from slaying our own brother.
Yes.
We are forbidden from destroying our own heritage. But the Most High, because of the law that He is in covenant with, used others to do that, to be the bramble unto us, to burn us, to just cut us down, to surround us, to enslave us. Isn't that what the rabbis say? The sages? Read.
Verse 6. And I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned, nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns.
We read that before, right? Philo even talked about that. Read.
I will also command the clouds that they rain, no rain upon it.
All right.
For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel.
When he says, I am the true vine, right? He's speaking about himself and his relationship to Israel, not the other nations. The vineyard pertains to Israel. The church will not make you believe that. They want you to believe otherwise.
Christians.
Read on.
And the men of Judah his pleasant plant.
You see who the plant pertains to? Israel. Read.
And he looked for judgment, but behold oppression. For righteousness, but behold a
This is
crime.
the fruit that they produced. Okay, let's go. Continue.
Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people. And he hath stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them. And the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets.
Read on.
For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still.
So even though he sees it fit to destroy us, he gives us a break. That's why we also saw the man who was blind. The first time he couldn't see, but finally at the end he was able to see. The spit had to go in his eyes to open up his eyes. He still couldn't see. So a second phase had to take place to finish the process so he can see clearly. And that's how Israel are. We are the trees that needs to be fertilized and kept. So we are punished right now But at some point in time, we will not be punished forever. Yes.
Did he not say you would sprinkle clean water upon that the last one?
He will sprinkle clean water upon us and he will clean us. That's correct. That's right. 26.
And he will lift up an ensign to the nations afar, and will hiss upon them the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. None shall be weary nor stumble among them.
Scattered Israelites, read.
None shall slumber nor sleep.
Blind Israelites, continue.
Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed,
Naked Israelites, read.
nor the latchet of their shoes.
Worn out Israel and broken Israel. Isaiah 65. We almost done. Read.
And that's a repeat of what happened when the children left Egypt.
That's right. We were in the desert. Our fathers were in the desert, and their clothes didn't wear out, shoes didn't wear out, things like that.
Verse 17.
65 and 17. Isaiah 65 and 17. Read.
For, behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind.
So he's going to restore the plants, these trees again. Read.
But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create.
Why?
For, behold, I create Jerusalem, a rejoicing.
So he's talking about creation, new heaven and new earth. But he boils it down to Jerusalem being created. Read on.
And her people a joy.
And the people of Jerusalem are Hebrews. Joy. That's what the restoration is all about. Their creation. Read on.
And I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and joy in my people.
Because when he came for 3 years, he couldn't find anything. When he passed through, he couldn't reap any fruit. And he chastised, he chopped it up, he allowed it to be exposed. And then after a while, he says, enough is enough. I'm gonna recreate this thing from the root all the way up. New seed. Revive it again. I'm going to have to do some genetic splicing. I'm going to go deep into it. Okay? I create Jerusalem a rejoicing and her people a joy. See that? Read on.
And the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. There shall be no more thanks an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old.
So this is the new kingdom, but you have children that are died at 100 years old? How come we don't hear about this thing in the church? Because you see, sin will still be around at that time. People will live a long life, but certain people will die. Some people will live on. Okay? That's the Messiah's kingdom it's speaking of, right? Continue.
But the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed.
If this is the new kingdom, why are the curses still around? Read on.
And they shall build houses.
They will build houses. The new Jerusalem, the occupants of the new Jerusalem will build houses. Read.
And inhabit them.
So we have work to do. And we will live in those houses. Read.
And they shall plant vineyards.
We're going to do what?
Plant vineyards.
Read.
And eat the fruit of them.
So now we can enjoy the fruit. 22.
They shall not build and another inhabit.
So throughout all this diaspora, as slaves, we have built people's homes and we haven't lived in those houses.
Deuteronomy 28.
We have a shack just to keep us alive so we can continue working for the field master. Right? Read on.
They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people.
Read it one more time.
For as the days of a tree are the days of my people.
The days of a tree are the days of my people. It goes back to Psalms 1. It goes back to everything Yeshua was talking about pertaining to the vineyard, the trees, and so forth. Israel, my people are the inhabitants of Jerusalem that will have houses. No one's going to take it from them. This is going to happen when the new heaven and the new earth is created. The renewed heaven and renewed creation. Read on.
And mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands.
Mine elect will long enjoy the work of their hands. This is speaking about Israel. Are we confused?
Nope.
Anyone confused?
No.
So with this, I say to everyone, shalom. As we return back to the Torah, to our scrolls as we turn back to the Most High. Let's be the types of trees that produce fruit in all seasons.